On September 2nd of 2023, last year, I, on a whim, uploaded a build video for Baldur's Gate 3 to my YouTube channel. It was about, the Devil Slayer, that's what I called it, and it was about Dante from Devil May Cry. It was a recreation of him in Baldur's Gate 3, which I had used for my own playthrough. It was my third playthrough of the game. It was a Dark Urge Redemption build, right after I'd done an evil run, and I mean, I didn't think anything of it. I've made videos for this channel before, a couple of videos on the game Phasmophobia, a couple of videos. I made an Elden Ring video, I made a video on Resident Evil 8, I've made I've made a few things, I've made some video essays, but it was nothing crazy. It was just me kind of messing around, and I got, I think 120 subscribers from all that when it was all said and done. And I wasn't really interested in content creation, I just was uploading it on a whim. So when that video got its first 1,000 views, and I had a lot of comments kind of coming back to me that were really positive, I thought, I mean, I could make another. And so I did. I made Virgil, which I completely messed up because I forgot that I didn't realize there was a katana in the game, so I had to scrap that video and remake it. I made some more Devil May Cry characters, and then went on to my own original concepts: the Psionic Warrior, the Dancer of Elistre, the Twin Stars, the Reaper, all of my popular builds, the Cryomancer, the Hellfire Pyromancer, the Greatest Detective, the True Striker, just to name a few off the top of my head that I quite like, for Twins in Time. There's been so many concepts, so many builds, so many fun ideas, so much discussion, so much growth. I mean, here we are, 100 videos and 6,500 subscribers later. In about half a year. Just shy. It takes a lot of people over a year to even get their first 1,000. And I don't know what I was doing right. Perhaps I caught a trend. Perhaps the algorithm just blessed me for some reason. But this channel has gone so much further than I ever thought it would. I have been able to do things I've never really done before. I've been able to, conquer my own self-doubt and become a much more sociable person. I used to be very, very socially anxious, if you couldn't tell from my commentary on my first few videos. But now that I'm here, I don't even feel like I'm the same person now that I was when I uploaded that video. So much in my life has changed just because of this channel, and I can't thank you all enough. Like I said, this isn't... I've done 100 videos on Baldur's Gate 3 now. 96 of them were builds. There was a couple of videos on patch updates, and one build where I did an extended combat showcase for my original Devil May Cry builds. And for my 100th or so video, I wanted to remaster that first video. Bring it all the way back to where we started. But before I really do get into it, I say this a lot, but thank you. Thank you so much for enabling me to come this far, to build this community that we have together alongside me, and for genuinely, and I'm not exaggerating this, genuinely changing my life. Thank you all so much. So now, as always, I'm back with another video. And today, we're doing... I think it's my 96th build, I think someone said in the comments. Thank you for commenting that. So, not quite the 100th build, but it is 100 videos. So, we are going to be remaking and remastering my first ever build video, the Devil Slayer, which is why this video is called the Devil Slayer Remastered. Now, remastered is basically just a term of just to kind of explain quickly in a way that people would understand, that I'm returning to a previous concept and going back over it. The build I've come up with today is very, very different than that original build, so it's not necessarily a replacement. That old build still works today. It's just the video itself doesn't use a lot of the restrictions and sensibilities that I place on my videos now to make them more applicable for more people. So I wanted to take another crack at this, approach it from a new angle, use my more modern video style, and just kind of go from there. And this isn't the only video I want to do this for. I might turn this into a mini-series that gets uploaded once every so often, where I remaster old builds. I'd actually quite like to tackle the Dancer of Elistre again, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, finally. I mean, it's taken 100 videos. I hope I'm starting to pronounce that right, that deity. So if there's any more concepts that I've done before that you would like me to go back and take another swing at, please let me know. But this is the main one I kind of wanted to do. Again, this is kind of a milestone celebration, so I won't delay any further. Let's get into the build. Now, my original build was a level 2 Paladin, level 6 Swords Bard, level 4 Thief Rogue. That was so we could use, you know, Paladin Smites in addition to our Bard spell slots, and because we went Bard, we'd get things like Taunts and such like that, and because of Thief, we'd get 2 bonus actions for dual wielding. That all still works, I mean, but I think I explored that exact kind of level mix better in my Twin Stars video, because for those of you that don't know, or just didn't notice if you've watched both, my original build, the original Devil Slayer and the Twin Stars, used the exact same levels, 2 Paladin, 6 Swords Bard, 4 Rogue, and I think if you want to go with that leveling scheme and use that skill set, I would play the Twin Stars build. So I wanted to take another crack at this. I wanted to create something that's a bit more like Dante. In my original video, I specifically wanted to capture his 4 unique styles: Trickster, Swordmaster, Royal Guard, and Gunslinger. Basically, Trickster, being that you have high maneuverability, you're able to teleport around the arena towards and away from enemies to be able to get around quickly and dodge things. Royal Guard being a very defensive style, allowing you to block enemy attacks and retaliate with big power, and then Swordmaster is fairly obvious, it's just using sword skills, and Gunslinger is fairly obvious using gun skills. So obviously in this game we don't have guns, so I supplemented that with dual crossbows, because Dante is known for having twin pistols, ebony and ivory, and I replaced his iconic Greatsword Rebellion with just the greatswords that we find in-game, namely the Baldur and his Giant Slayer towards the end. That concept is staying true. Oh, and I also wanted to pick up taunts as well, because of course you need taunts. But I wanted to explore that in a different way, because while that build was great, it was mainly a single shot kind of like, you know, like big power hitting build from Divine Smites. It wasn't really about doing like long stylish combos that Devil May Cry is known for. The sword flourishes that you get from Swords Bard, the blade flourishes, do kind of account for that, but they're never going to be more powerful than the smites. So I kind of wanted to get a blend of different fighting styles, different extra moves to add into Dante's arsenal, or the character they're creating here, which I've named Dante anyway. And just kind of make a character that's about being stylish as hell, just getting all these different attacks off, inflicting different conditions with the different attacks, while also getting all of the things I mentioned before, the dodging, the swords, the guns, and the guard. So I feel like I've accomplished this, again, in not necessarily a better way, but a different way, and I think you're going to quite like this build. It gets us quite a lot. So, now that I've explained the concept and had my little, you know, sob session at the start, let's actually get into it. So, contrary to the Paladin levels that we took at the start before, we're going to be taking fighter levels instead. This is going to allow us to pick up a fighting style, and of course we're going to be grabbing great weapon fighting. This is a greatsword build, although the unique thing about this build is because Dante's weapon selection is so varied across the games, you can use pretty much any weapon you like and it's still going to work. I'm going to be focusing on greatswords, but 2 weapon fighting, if you wanted to dual wield scimitars for Agni and Rudra, you could go for something like spears, or something like that if you wanted to kind of emulate, you know, King Cerberus. There's a ton of different ways you could do this, but I'm going to go with what Dante's most known for, which is greatsword and dual guns, or in our case, dual hand crossbows. So, great weapon fighting works perfectly for us. Whenever you roll a 1 or 2 on the damage die for an attack with a 2-handed melee weapon, that die is rerolled once, basically allowing us to keep our damage numbers high. As for our ability scores, we have a pretty standard affair for a fighter. We're going with a 17 strength to start, because yes, we are going to use Ethel's Boon and the Potion of Everlasting Vigour to push this up to 20. That's because we only get 3 feats with this build, and I want to use all 3 of them for actual feats, not ability score improvements. So this build is going to be a bit funky, but trust me, those feats are going to be worth it. So we kind of do need to hand wave the game mechanic a bit, just getting the boon and getting the potion in order to give this build enough power. Dexterity is at 8 because, again, we're quite multi-ability skill dependent with this build. We do need the gloves of dexterity, and plus they fit the fashion anyway, so I wanted to pick them up. So we're dumping dexterity to boost it up to an 18 with the gloves of dex. Constitution is at a 16. We are going to have some concentration-based spells on this build, and I did want to have a decent pool of HP to start, so we're going to be starting with 16 Constitution, but you can change that if you like. Intelligence is dumped because we don't need it. Wisdom is at 10 just because it keeps our ability scores even, and Charisma is at 14. Constitution and Charisma can be swapped around, but our Charisma is not going to matter if you follow my leveling scheme here until the later game, where you'll be able to respec your skills into something else with new equipment, so I would say Charisma at 14 is perfectly good for now. As for our proficiencies, like my original build, this is a Redemption Dark Urge build. And the reason I went for that initially, I didn't explain it very well in my original video, but I'll go over my reasoning here. I think that in the case of basically a parallel universe version of Dante, where he is a, character in D&D or Baldur's Gate, rather than Devil May Cry, I think his lineage wouldn't necessarily come from devils. I actually like the idea that for this game, instead of having a demon father, being where his infernal heritage comes from, or his, devil side abilities, I guess, quote-unquote, he actually gets his powers from being Balls chosen, unknowingly. So I think he would have known that before, and again, you can kind of follow the Dark Urge's storyline of him being a bit evil, but maybe, you could kind of flavour that as that was actually Virgil doing that, and he kind of has like a memory mismatch, or something along those lines. But basically, I like the idea of having that kind of like dark father side be Bull instead of a demon like Sparta. Or Sparta? No, it's Sparta, not Sparta. Whoops. So I honestly think that works out quite nicely overall. I think it's just a nice parallel to the original story without wholly replicating it. Again, I'm never really setting out to make exact replicas of the characters that I build here when I make a character build. Just, facsimiles. When I made the Cloud video, or I guess the entire Avalanche video if you watched it, a lot of people said, like, well, you could just say it's an alternate universe, and I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'll do the Marvel excuse. Anyways, so because we are a Haunted one, because we are a Dark Urge, we have Medicine and Intimidation proficiency, which is nice. Because we are playing a human, I have chosen Persuasion, since we have decent Charisma anyway, it'd be nice, and Dante is a quite persuasive person. And I've chosen Insight and Athletics as our, Fighter proficiencies. Insight just because it kind of makes sense and nothing else really from Fighter works, and Athletics is great because we already have high strength, we might as well have the ability to throw things, jump high, and, not be pushed so easily. So yeah, I think that works out pretty nicely. At level 2 of Fighter, we are going to be getting Action Surge. Basically, once per short rest, we get an entire extra action to use, which can lead to things like extra attack and the like. This is one of the ways we're going to be able to create longer combos. Allowing us to basically do our full combo and then Action Surge and get a little bit more. It's just an ability to do more damage in a single turn, which I really, really like for this build, so it's worth picking up anyway, since we're going to be going quite a bit further in Fighter than usual. At Fighter level 3, we get to pick our subclass, and of course, if we're picking a Fighter subclass and we want a ton of different attacks, we're going Battle Master. This is going to give us a superiority die, which are D8s. They fuel our Battle Master's maneuvers. Whenever we want to use a maneuver, we spend that die and roll it. The die's damage gets added, or various other things can happen. Basically, it depends on the maneuver. We'll get more into that in a minute. But basically, we can spend these die that recover on a short or long rest to be able to do these maneuvers, get these special attacks. We start with 4, but we will have more as the build goes on. Speaking of, we get to pick 3 maneuvers to start with. Now, there are going to be some obvious ones here that you want to pick up, but we are going to get different variants of these later as well, so you don't have to pick these up straight away. I've decided I want to get probably the trickiest thing to grab out of our earlier goals, that being Royal Guard, because obviously there are ways to increase AC, and that's kind of how you're supposed to boost your defense in this game, but in the moment, blocking or guarding or trying to suddenly raise your defense when you're about to be hit, like what Royal Guard does, is a bit tricky in this game, so we actually have 2 ways of doing it. Number 1 is Evasive Footwork, allowing you to impose disadvantage on melee attacks against you for the cost of a superiority die. You can do this as a bonus action, so you kind of have to prepare it when you know you're going to take a big attack, but it can help, and it's one of the better ways of getting Royal Guard here. As for our other Royal Guard option, we're going with Riposte. It's not just about dodging, it's about counter-attacking. And Riposte allows us to use our reaction whenever an attack misses us, so if we used Evasive Footwork, for example, to make this happen, we retaliate with a powerful strike that deals an additional 1d8 damage, so it does our weapon attack, plus an additional 1d8. Those two, in a nutshell, are basically how we're going to get Royal Guard. We'll have ways of augmenting our AAC as well, as a way of doing that as an alternative Royal Guard, so you can mix and match here, but I really like picking up these two, especially early on, because Riposte is very strong in the early game in my opinion. Now, as for your last attack, we are going to pick something up here that will kind of kill two birds with one stone. Goading Attack. Goading Attack is going to allow us to make an attack that deals an additional 1d8 of damage, but it also goads the target into attacking us, and that target receives disadvantage on attacking any other creature. Devil May Cry games are usually solo outings, you don't have teammates, so this is a nice way to kind of like keep that like solo gameplay where you want the enemy to attack, to kind of come towards you so you can combo them, and in the games, whenever you taunt an enemy, it does put them into a fury mode, which makes them attack more aggressively, so goading attack makes sense. This is literally a taunt and an attack at the same time. It's perfect for this build. Next up at Fighter level 4 we get to choose our first feat, and since we're focusing mainly on our melee stuff for now, we're going to kind of get the range stuff more when we multiclass. Let's get our big melee, big melee feat, Great Weapon Master. Yes, Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter both were something that a lot of people commented on the original build that I missed that would have made the build better, and honestly, I agree now. At the start, I didn't really like these feats. I just didn't like the way the math worked, and like, I felt like I was missing all the time with them. But that's because I was bad. I was just bad at the game back then. So I've decided to incorporate Great Weapon Master into this build. Whenever we land a critical hit or kill a target with a melee weapon attack, you can make another melee weapon attack as a bonus action that turn. So even longer combos, literally perfect for us. Attacks with melee weapons you are proficient with and are wielding in both hands can deal an additional 10 damage at the cost of a -5 penalty. I have got lots of ways to offset that penalty with this build. You're going to be hitting very consistently, so that additional 10 damage is going to be very strong. So, very happy to have it on this build. It makes so much sense. How did I not go for that before? Anyways, next up we are going to grab Extra Attack from level 5. Now we have an even longer combo. Perfect, exactly what we're looking for. Next up at Fighter level 6 we get to pick an additional bonus feat, and I want to continue with the melee stuff. Again, that's kind of what we're focusing more on with these Fighter levels, so I'm going to pick up our next melee feat. Now, you have two options here. One, you could go with Martial Adept. This will give you an additional superiority die that you would not normally get from playing Fighter, bringing our total up to 5 for now. And you would also get to choose 2 more maneuvers that you wouldn't normally get. So you may think that this is worth it, and if you want to go for it, you absolutely can, just to give yourself more attacks. But a lot of these abilities that we would want are going to be covered later, so I don't think it's as necessary for this build. It was my initial idea, but I've decided to grab something else. I want the Charger feat. Charger is going to give us 2 unique weapon attacks. Charger Shove, which allows us to charge forward with our weapon and push enemies. And as we move, we don't provoke opportunity attacks, basically just allowing us to get an extra push. This one I don't care about so much. What I do care about is Charger Weapon Attack. What this does is it allows us to spend our action and our bonus action, which kinda sucks, but you'll see why in a minute. We deal an attack that has a flat +5 extra damage. In addition to Great Weapon Master, that would be a +15, allowing us to charge forward without provoking opportunity attacks and attacking our first enemy. When you use this with a greatsword, you charge with it extended forward in front of you, which, for those of you who have played the Devil May Cry games, would recognize this as Dante's iconic Stinger attack, one of the most iconic attacks in the whole series, used by pretty much every player, especially when you get hit and then you just, activate Devil Trigger and just spam it over and over again because you're frustrated. So I cannot believe I missed this again on my original build. Being able to get one of Dante's most recognizable moves right off the bat is such a good idea, and it fits perfectly within this build. Obviously, it's not 100% necessary. You could take an ability score improvement, you could take Martial Adept, you could take Lucky, Mobile, whatever you want here, but I really, really wanted to pick this up as it just feels so perfect for this build. But again, entirely up to you. But you'll see the value that it has in combat, trust me. So I'm going to pick it up here. At fighter level 7, we are going to be able to grab an additional superiority die. We now have 5 total, 6 if you took Martial Adept, and we gain 2 more maneuvers. Now again, we are going to be getting alternatives to certain things later, so I'll quickly go over the ones that we don't need now. Sweeping attack, we're not going to need. Pushing attack, we're not going to need. Menacing, we won't need. Fainting, I would say, is probably going to be one of the ones I do pick. We don't really care about these other ones. Fainting is going to give us a unique thing here. You can use both your action and your bonus action, so similar to Charger, to attack with advantage and deal an additional 1d8 damage. That advantage is really helpful for offsetting the penalties from Great Weapon Master. So I feel like it's pretty good. We are going to get another way of getting advantage on our attacks anyway, so you might want to respec this out later once you get that item, or just not bother taking this at all, but I think it's worth mentioning because it would be really good, again, for mitigating Great Weapon Master and getting that additional damage on top of it. But, you know, you could also, I would also suggest Trip Attack is really good as well, and it's not, and being able to knock enemies prone is always great, so I would probably say this is one you want to take. Menacing could be good. It can frighten the target, which is nice. I'm probably going to go with Fainting and Tripping. Disarming attack would be good, but Dante doesn't really disarm enemies so much. He can sometimes, but it's enemy dependent, not dependent on him. So I think Fainting just for that advantage on melee weapon attacks, and Trip Attack for that kind of unique interaction with Prone, which I think is very, very good. And at Fighter level 8, we're leaving Fighter. As much as I would love this extra feat, it's not something we really need for this build. As much as we would like it, we don't need it. And I want to take 5 levels in another class, and that is, well, it's from the original build. We're going Bard. Of course I'm still going to make Dante a Bard, are you kidding me? Now, you can really take these levels in any order you like. In fact, if you don't care as much about that extra superiority die, you could drop the levels of Fighter, the one level of Fighter, maybe play a Bard first and play a level 6 Bard instead of a level 5 one to get extra attack that way. Maybe you could throw in maybe a couple of levels of something else if you wanted to go for a 5-5 split. There's a ton of customization with this build, but I want to go 7 Fighter, Bard 5 for this setup. You can even take a 1 level dip of Bard right at the start if you want to get, like, maybe some basic things like Vicious Mockery for the taunt early. It's entirely up to you, but I'm going to be using Vicious Mockery for more of, not Vicious Mockery, sorry, the Bard levels for more of the ranged stuff. And again, Dante doesn't really use a lot of the spells that we would get from this, but we're going to get a lot of utility that we like. So let's go into Bard. As I said, we get to pick our cantrips. Of course, we're taking Vicious Mockery. It's literally weaponizing a taunt. It's something we 100% want. It's too perfect for this build. And our other cantrip can be whatever we like. Friends makes a ton of sense for a charisma-based character like us. As for our spells, we have a few to pick from. I'm going to be basically picking utility options very similar to the original video. Longstrider, Featherfall, and Not Sleep, Speak of Animals. These will give us a ton of utility, more movement speed, the ability to jump from wherever we want. Speaking of animals is just one of the best skills you can get, and Dante does talk to animals in the games if you count Cerberus, so, you know, might as well pick it up. As for our final spell, it can be whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. I would say Fairy Fire would actually be a really good option. Again, another way of getting advantage on our attack rolls, which will be seriously good for offsetting Great Weapon Master, so it's just another option. Again, we will have a main method of doing that, but this could help. As for our starting instrument, we're obviously going with a lute, because Dante canonically uses a guitar, so it makes sense. We also gain a proficiency here, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick. We kind of have everything that Dante would have at this point, so maybe something like performance just for playing that lute. Sure, why not? At Bard level 2, we're going to get a bunch of cool stuff that we all know about Bard. I mean, this is all the common stuff. I've gone over this almost 100 times. Probably not that much, obviously, but a lot of my builds are bards, especially the earlier ones. Regardless, Jack of all trades, you know what it does. Add half your proficiency bonus to anything you're not proficient in. Awesome. Song of Rest, a third short rest, one of the most powerful abilities in the game. Brilliant, nothing new there. We do get to pick an additional level 1 spell, and we don't really have any concentration things at the moment, so I'll go with Heroism, just giving us 5 temporary hit points each turn, and immunity to being frightened, which feels pretty on theme for Dante. Spin. I love spinning the character models. 100 videos, that's never changed. Anyways, as for our subclass, you already know I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's College of Swords, which I don't think I've actually built with in a while now that I think about it. When was the last time I used College of Swords? I deliberately avoid using it as much as possible, so it may have been a while ago. Either way, College of Swords is going to get us a ton of things we want, namely a fighting style, which of course we're going with 2-weapon fighting to give our dual hand crossbows the boost that they need, allowing us to add our ability modifier to the damage of offhand attacks, which makes perfect sense for us. But we also get the Blade Flourishes. This is going to round out even more of our stylish combos, with both our ranged attacks and our melee attacks. Slashing Flourish allows us to attack 2 enemies at once, both with range and melee. The slashing variant hits 2 enemies in front of you, whereas the ranged variant, where is it here, allows you to shoot 2 enemies, except what makes this ability cool is, if you don't know, Slashing Flourish ranged can also allow you to shoot the same enemy twice, which is super strong. And all of these flourishes add an additional bit of damage equal to our Bardic Inspiration die, because it uses our Bardic Inspiration. So, overall, I feel like this is pretty powerful on its own, but we have even more. Defensive Flourish, allowing you to make a weapon attack, either ranged or melee, and increase your armor class by 4 if you hit. Royal Guard right there in an ability that we're already going to want to use, so that's great. And finally, Mobile Flourish, both melee and ranged again, allowing you to knock an enemy away from you and then teleport to them after. That is straight out of Devil May Cry. That is Trickster, part of the high maneuverability and the ability to teleport to enemies. It's straight up Trickster, which is awesome. College of Swords gives us a ton of things. Again, you may have wanted to take these Bard levels earlier than not, if you don't care about the fighter stuff as much, so feel free to mix and match these levels. Again, all of my builds are very flexible. I did also consider taking 2 levels of Barbarian and taking those levels out of Fighter, maybe 1 out of Bard, because I thought maybe getting Reckless Attack would be a good way to get advantage, so you could do that if you wanted to, but I'm quite happy with the level setup I have now, and we're still getting pretty much everything anyway. As for our spells, we now get to choose a level 2 option, and I'm going to recommend Hold Person. Now, the justification for this one is a little bit thin. In DMC 3, Dante did have a Quicksilver ability, which allowed him to slow down time, so I'm kind of letting Hold Person be that. We get to hold a humanoid enemy still. They can't move, act, or react, and attacks are always critical hits. So basically, with Great Weapon Master, Hold Person, get close, and they're dead. They're just dead. You action surge, they're dead. Like, it's a really good combo for this build. Again, our charisma isn't the highest at the moment, but again, you will be able to get pieces of equipment that can help mitigate that if you so choose, in which case Hold Person will have a higher chance of going off. Kinda wish we could get Hold Monster on this build, but I'm not going all the way in Bard, so, you know. As for our abilities, we actually get to skill Expertise here. And I'm going to go with Persuasion, so we have a proper, expertise and a social skill. And I quite like getting Athletics here, but you may think that's a waste if you don't care so much about not being able to be shoved or throwing or anything like that. So I could see Performance or Intimidation also being good options, but I'll go with Athletics for now. At Bard level 4, we get to choose another feat, and since we now finally have 2-weapon fighting and more ranged attacks for our from the Blade Flourishes, let's grab our final feat of the build, Sharpshooter. Yeah, I've got Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter on a single build. Am I most OP broken build yet? No? Good, I don't want to make that anyway. But Sharpshooter is actually really going to help us out for this. Our ranged weapon attacks no longer receive penalty from high ground rules. Great, Dante's a quick shot anyway. And ranged weapon attacks with weapons you are proficient with have a -5 penalty to the attack roll but deal an additional 10 damage. It's literally ranged Great Weapon Master. And because we're getting all this stuff to offset Great Weapon Master, we're also going to be offsetting Sharpshooter at the same time. Meaning that these feats can exist parallel to each other without needing too much adjustment to the build, which is great. So now our melee attacks and our ranged attacks are going to be super strong. We get another cantrip at this level, and it really doesn't matter, pick whatever you like. I'll go with Mage Hand because it has utility. We also do get another spell at this level, and it's entirely up to you what you want to pick. I kind of like the idea of getting Cloud of Daggers as another kind of weapon attack almost. Not really, but summoning a cloud of spectral swords is kind of what DMC characters do sometimes. Not necessarily Dante, except for one time when he did. In fact, he does do it actually, in DMC 5. If you do the thing, which is technically spoilers, so I won't say it here, but you know, it actually does make sense for him, so we'll pick it up. And finally, at Bard level 5, we get the usual stuff that we're here for. Our Bardic Inspiration is now a D8, which means more damage for our Blade Flourishes, and our Bardic Inspiration now recovers on a short rest, making it a more available resource. So now both our Superiority die and our Bardic Inspiration die recover on a short rest, so we have access to a lot of attacks, which is exactly what we're looking for. And we also do get access to level 3 spells at this point, but I don't really care about any of these. Pick anything you like, it really doesn't matter. I think if you're going to be playing this character, you're going to be the face of the party, then Enhance Ability just makes sense, giving you the ability to basically gain advantage on any ability checks. So, you know, if you want to be the strength guy, if you want to be the lock-picking guy, if you want to be the smart guy. You're not really smart, you have 8 in intelligence, but advantage can help. It's entirely up to you. Pick whatever you like here. I'll just go with Enhance Ability. And that is the build for the second time in our history on this channel. So, what you're going to be getting out of this build is a ton of versatility. You're getting a bunch of ranged and melee attacks through your maneuvers, charger, the blade flourishes, all of that good stuff, your weapon skills that you get innately, so things like Cleave, Lacerate, Pommel Strike. You're getting a ton of interesting things. You get the ability to be really effective at both melee and ranged with Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter, and the ability to do a bunch of attacks in one turn with things like Extra Attack, Action Surge, being able to use your bonus action to attack with Offhand or with Great Weapon Master if you're lucky. There's a ton of different things you can do with this build. Compared to my original build, which used Thief Rogue for a second bonus action, you technically have less attacks per turn on average, because you could always do 2 offhanded attacks with a crossbow, but I felt like because we're not taking Crossbow Expert with this build, that was a little bit less valuable anyway, and I feel like being able to do more attacks in general, because if you think about it, you're always guaranteed to be able to do 3 attacks per turn. 2 melee attacks or 2 ranged attacks with your action, and then a bonus action attack anyway, so you're always going to have stuff to do. And again, you also gain the utility spells that we all like to have: Long Stride of Heatherfall, Speaker of Animals, Song of Rest, all that good stuff. It's just everything you like from both classes packed into one nice little pretty package. So let's get into the equipment now, because obviously that's quite important for this build. Now, in my original video, I had a big issue with basically just saying, oh yeah, just use all this gear in Act 3 and you've got a good build, and obviously that's still somewhat the case with my videos today, but I always provide earlier game alternatives, and that's what I'm going to do today. This build is very, very customizable and has a lot of options. But let's get into the main thing first, namely the weapons, which are the most important, and we're going to put that away as well. So, Balduran's Giant Slayer is the final weapon you want to go for in this game. It's an Act 3 option that you do have to beat a pretty tough boss to get, but it's a fun challenge. On a hit, you double the damage from your strength modifier. This weapon grants you advantage on attack rolls against large, huge, or gargantuan creatures. It's a +3 weapon, and you also gain 2 unique things, namely a special attack called Topple the Bigfoot, allowing you to deal additional damage equal to your proficiency bonus, and on a hit, a large, huge, or gargantuan creature takes an additional 2 to 12 slashing damage and must succeed a strength save or fall prone. Bit situational on that extra bit, but hey, that extra little damage may come a long way. We also gain Giant Form, which allows us to grow to a fearsome size. Your weapons deal an additional 1d6 damage, so even more damage. You gain 27 temp HP and advantage on strength checks and saving throws. This can be used once per short rest. Closest thing we're going to get to Devil Trigger. Yes, technically there is sort of a demonic transformation in the game, but you have to be super, super evil for that. But we are playing as a Dark Coach, so you could get it, but I'd probably save that for a Virgil playthrough. So this is the closest thing we're going to get, and I think it's quite nice. And this sword does kind of remind me of the Devil Sword Sparta in a bit of a way, with kind of the like living aspects of it basically plastered onto the kind of grungy looking metal, almost looks like stone. I think it's a perfect final weapon for Dante to pick up in Act 3, but a really good Act 1 option that I actually think will do decently throughout the game is Jorgal's Greatsword. Jorgal's Greatsword is a +1 greatsword, which doesn't look like it has anything too special going for it at the moment, except for its unique attack, Colossal Onslaught. You channel your meddlesome strength and strike all creatures in front of you in a line. You basically just kind of do like this like big energy beam attack from your sword. I say it's like an energy beam. You kind of like slash, and there's like a wind thing, kind of like that. This is going to kind of show the former weeb in me. Anybody ever see Inuyasha? And they had that, like, wind attack with his sword? I've not actually seen it. I just know it from, like, AMVs or something. I had a friend who was kind of into it. But basically, it is kind of just a big fuck-off attack, and it will work out quite nicely. I mean, there's a ton of other options. You can literally use any weapon in the game up until you get the Baldur and Giant Slayer. It really doesn't matter. Two-handed weapons are obviously preferable, but this will also work. But things like the Everburn Blade, the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane, if you wanted to kind of do that shenanigans, all sorts. You can do all sorts, but the Baldur and Giant Slayer is where you want to go, and the Jorgal's Greatsword, which I think you get from Grimforge, is a good bet for Act 1 that will carry you for quite a while. Next up, let's look at the ranged weapons. Obviously, we're bringing the classic combo. I used this in the original video, and that has not changed here since no better options have been added to the game. We have the Hellfire Hand crossbow in our main hand. It allows us to inflict burning when we're hitting a creature while hiding or invisible. Not something we're really going to be doing, but I guess it's there. It's a +2 crossbow, one of the only ones in the game. I believe it's this and a regular +2 hand crossbow that exist in the game, and that's it. And it also gives us the ability to cast Scorching Ray as a level 3 once per short rest. So a bit of extra utility, which is always nice. I'm just going to put Baldurin's back on. And also we're pairing this with the Near Misser, a +1 crossbow that deals force damage exclusively, which has lots of utility that you might not expect, and it gives our two crossbows a bit of distinction from each other, as well as the ability to cast Magic Missile as a level 3 spell once per short rest. Basically, those extra spells are going to give a bit of utility, but varying damage types is really, really good, and just having a powerful ranged attack. I mean, again, these are being augmented by Sharpshooter, which makes them a decent chunk strong. Do I have those enabled? Yes, I do. So you can see they're both enabled here, and you can toggle these on or off if you want a better chance to hit, which is nice. Let's get into the armor now. My main Act 3 option that I kind of want to go for here is the Mask of Soul Perception, which gives us a +2 bonus to attack rolls, initiative rolls, and perception checks, as well as the ability to cast Detect Thoughts. This is mainly here because A, it's going to give us the jump on enemies with that initiative roll bonus, perception checks are nice, but also the +2 to attack rolls is really what we're here for. Since both Sharpshooter and Great Weapon Master give us a -5 penalty, that +2 is turning that into a -3 instead. We're already starting to offset that damage. But we have other options here. As an Act 1 option, the Grimskull Helm would be a good choice. Attacks can't land critical hits against you, which is nice. You gain a free resistance to fire damage, which again, if you're half devil, does make sense. And you also gain the ability to cast Hunter's Mark once per long rest, which isn't great, but we're mainly here for that critical hit resistance, which is great. This will be a great Act 1 option that can carry you up to Act 3 until you get your hands on the other stuff. If you want a bit more charisma, you can go with the Birthright Hat to just give you a +2, but that's another Act 3 option, but it's an alternative to the mask. If you feel like your attacks are landing pretty decently without it, then maybe getting that higher charisma would be nice. Or if you can go with the option that I had in the original video, well, the Helm of Baldurin. This will give you Baldurin's Vitality, allowing you to heal for 2 hit points at the beginning of each turn, which is in line with Dante's Devil Trigger ability, which automatically heals him. You have a +1 bonus to armor class and saving throws, always nice. You cannot be stunned, and attacks cannot land critical hits against you. If you feel like your attacks are hitting enough because we have enough sources of advantage, you don't really need that -5 penalty offsetting, then this works really, really nicely for us. But of course, you have a ton of options here to go with if you like. This is a straight upgrade over the Grimskull Helm though, so you definitely want this replaced by Act 3. Next up is the armor, and we have the Elegant Studded Leather, again from the original video. This gives us a +2 bonus to initiative rolls, again allowing us to get that initial jump on enemies. It gives us advantage on stealth checks, which is nice, and it also gives us the ability to use shield once per long rest, another Royal Guard, raising our armor class by 5, which is awesome. But this is an Act 3 option, of course, so I have a very decent Act 1 alternative, the Padded Armour +2. And now, this is an Act 1 option. I have seen it appear in Act 1. It just depends on how high level you are, but it might be an Act 2 option if you're kind of rushing things. Basically, this is just a kind of trench coat looking thing, which the older, more anime-style Dante was known for. I mean, with this kind of more modded look, I've gone for something a bit closer to maybe a mix between DMC 4 and 5, slightly younger face with a bit of stubble and the longer grey hair as opposed to the DMC 3 kind of like short cut that he had. And of course this, with this colour scheme, is great. I will point out that obviously this character's face and hair are both modded, as well as I'm using a modded dye, which I believe this is from the Boring dye pack. This is the Perfume dye, and this is the Rust Bloom dye, in order to get this kind of reddish colour. But if you go back to the original video, where again this equipment was used, you can see what I did as a vanilla option. If you still wanted to create a character that looks like this, go back to the original video. I apologise for the commentary, as it's bad, but you'll kind of get a sense for how to design this character visually if you're playing on console. But this is a modded version because I'm doing that now. So yeah, Padded Armour +1 from, +2, my apologies, from Act 1 until you get the Elegant Studded Leather. This will give us a total AC of 18 overall, with 14 from the Armour and 4 from Dex, which isn't great for the endgame, especially if you're playing on Tactician or Honor mode. But when I originally did this build, I had that much AC and I played on Tactician and it was fine. But that was a few patches ago, so maybe things have changed. As mentioned before, we are using the Gloves of Dexterity. Again, these are obtained in Act 1, so you get them super early. They set our Dex to 18 and give us a +1 to our attack. Now, I'm pretty sure that just means we get a +1 bonus to attack rolls. I think that's just what that means. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that can help offset the penalty from our feats as well. But if you feel like you don't want to start with 8 Dexterity, even though you can get this quite early, you can just respec after you get these. Put maybe like 14 points in the Dex or something and take out the Charisma. Entirely up to you. And finally, for our boots, we have the Hell Dusk boots. Not part of the original build because I straight up didn't know they existed. You cannot be forcibly moved by your foe's spells or actions, and you ignore the effects of difficult terrain. Perfect. Feels completely on theme for Dante. Infernal Evasion. When you fail a saving throw, you may use your reaction to succeed instead. Now, the wiki says this is once per long rest. The game doesn't say this anywhere, but I trust the wiki, so I'm going to say that that's the case. Now, that saving throw is saving throw save, I guess? Basically, guaranteed saving throws are really, really important for this build, and you'll see why in a moment, so that fits perfectly when you really need to succeed that saving throw. And finally, we get the Hell Crawler action, allowing us to teleport, Trickster, and deal an additional 2 to 16 fire damage where we land, and the impact blast spreads in a 3-meter zone. Unfortunately, and we can only use this once per short rest. Unfortunately, this does also injure us, so you have to be a bit careful, but I figured it was a nice cool fire-themed teleport, because again, Dante does kind of have a fire theme going on. But of course, if you wanted a decent Act 1 option that fulfills the same purpose, the one, the only, the classic Disintegrating Nightwalkers, obtained in Act 1, meaning that you cannot be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared, and cannot slip on grease or ice, and you can cast Misty Step once per short rest. When I first started this channel, I was using these boots for like every other build, and it became like a really boring thing, and even I commented on videos how much I hated how good these boots were. And I've managed to make a lot of builds that don't use these over my near 100 builds, but at the end of the day, they're still exactly what we want for a build like this, and even if you don't care for the Hell Dust boots, you can actually just use these right up until you kill the final boss. So, it's entirely up to you, but I do like upgrading to the Hell Dust boots when you get your hands on them in Act 3, because I feel like they give us just a bit more of utility and a bit more synergy with the build. Next up for our amulets, this is an Act 2 option. We have the Amulet of the Harpers, giving us advantage on wisdom saving throw checks, which, being one of the most important saving throws, is really good, which is it's also kind of why I put my wisdom to 10 rather than dumping it. And it also gives us another usage of shield once per short rest, so we have 2, or this one's once per long rest, my apologies. So you get basically once per short rest, and then you have an extra one as a long rest if you need it. Not the best option, but it was something I kind of wanted to pick up. Again, mainly actually for the advantage on wisdom saving throw checks, because one of the most important rings for this build is the Risky Ring. Now, we have a lot of ways of getting advantage on this build if you don't want to take the Risky Ring. I've gone over them. Fairy Fire, Hold Person, Trip Attack would knock prone, so that gives advantage, a bunch of stuff. But the Risky Ring is a way to basically make sure you always have advantage on attack rolls online for both melee and ranged attacks. The caveat being, and it's a big caveat, but you receive disadvantage on saving throws. Now this is an Act 2 option, and and you can get it right at the start of Act 2 if you know what you're doing. So it's pretty good. And I find that even though you have the disadvantage on those saving throws, if you're dealing enough damage for the enemy not to really have a chance to cast those things on you, it doesn't really matter. And you have to remember you are playing in a party. If you fail a saving throw, you're going to have allies that can back you up and help you get out of that situation. But again, we can synergize this sort of thing with, like I said, the Helldust Boots, giving us that once per long rest guaranteed save, so that can help mitigate things when you know a bad saving throw is coming. We also have, well, we don't, if I'm being honest, we don't have much to mitigate it, but again, the Amulet of the Harpers can help with the Wisdom saving throws, which is a big one. But you'll kind of have to deal with, you know, that disadvantage. But again, maybe you want to take those couple of levels of Barbarian for Reckless Attack to kind of get rid of that. But I find in practice, the Risky Ring isn't as dangerous as it would seem. Probably not something you want on Honor mode. You might want to do some adjustment there. But I feel like if you're playing on Tactician and lower, you should be fine. Should be. Totally. 100%. Well, you know, you could play a Gnome, get rid of all the mental saving stat disadvantages, or you could even use the, I haven't included it here, but you could use the Fey Semblance Amulet, which would give you advantage on Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma saving throws, same as a Gnome. And if you don't, and for those of you who don't know, advantage and disadvantage cancel each other out, so you would just have regular saving throws. That would still leave you with the physical saving throws, but they're not as important as the mental ones. But once you get into Act 3, I wholeheartedly recommend you swap this out for the Amulet of Greater Health, which comes from the original build. This will set your Constitution score to 23, allowing you to take your points out of Constitution and put them into other things like Charisma, Wisdom, and Intelligence, which would allow you then to have better saving throws anyway. This would give you advantage on con saves, so you'll have regular con saves with the Risky Ring, and overall it's just going to turn this build into a much better build. You can get this right at the start of Act 3 without having to fight anything if you know what you're doing. So if it's like your 4th or 5th playthrough or whatever, and you kind of know what to do, you can make this build really, really easily. But don't worry, this isn't necessary to grab as soon as you can. If you're not sure where it is and you just kind of want to come across it naturally, don't worry about it, you will find it. It's just definitely worth picking up when it comes up. So I think it's a pretty important part of the build, especially allowing you to get your charisma up to like 16 or so, which is going to be better for your bard stuff. So yeah, that is my almost 100th build. A return to my roots, I guess. And what a ride it's been, as I said at the start of the video. Thank you again for all of your support, especially if you sticking out this far. Yeah, if you stuck around this far, I mean, I see some people who have their subscriber status set to public, and they're subscribed for like 4 months, or like, I think the highest I ever saw was 5, which is insane. But I know there's some of you who have been around since the very beginning, and I seriously appreciate you all. I really, really do. If you're one of those people who subscribed, like, was part of that first wave of subscribers I got, like, when I first started this channel in the first few videos or so, please let me know. Because I'm very curious to know how long all of you have, like, known about the channel, or have been subscribed for, or have just been, you know, like, joining in with stuff like the build requests and the live streams and all that. Let me know, like, when you discovered the channel, because I'm genuinely curious. But anyways, that's end of video stuff. Let's get into the combat footage. As you can see in the combat footage, I am still using the tutorial boss for the moment. I've got an idea, though. I kind of want to see if I can create a modded encounter, and I think I might be able to do it, which would make things easier for me. I'm going to have that, but I couldn't quite get that set up in time for this video, and I apologize. But again, we're the Devil Slayer. Let me fight a devil. Just let me have this one, okay? Let me have this one. As you can see, the build performs as advertised. It's big damage. Very, very big damage. And, I mean, again, you get the ranged versatility, you get the melee versatility, you get the extra buffs from the spells. You get everything. I mean, freaking look at the weapon modifier, weapon attack modifier for our main hand attack. It's over 20. That's insane. It's huge. And, yeah, we're not getting those big damage smites, but we're getting damage in a lot of other ways through consistent attacks, the extra damage from the flourishes and the maneuvers. We get all the versatility that makes Dante Dante. We get Royal Guard, Trickster, Swordmaster, Gunslinger. It just does everything that we want to do, and I absolutely love it. I feel like it's a nice side grade to the original build. The two builds do different things for a similar concept, and one does not replace the other, so pick and choose. But again, I kind of prefer the Twin Stars for that original leveling scheme, whereas this build I think works great for what we're trying to do here. So yeah, I guess I'll get into like end of video stuff, man. I mean, there's plenty to talk about. The last deity build that I did, the Dawnbringer, which I was really proud of and really excited for, that's done really well, so I'm happy about that. And yeah, I mean, come on. I've said it already, but 100 Baldur's Gate 3 videos. How? When I start projects, like, I've tried to write a book, I've tried to make my own games, for those of you who don't know, a long time ago, I think some of you may know now, I made a fan game based on the Rooster Teeth show RWBY. I made that game when I was like 14, it's very bad, don't go looking for it. Those of you who know. And that was one of the first times I ever finished a big project. And it felt good at the time, and the game got way more recognition than I ever thought it would. There was a lot of hype built up to its release, and I've only just learned now that it was one of the first fan games for that show ever made. One of the original few, anyway. There was a couple games that had been made before it, but it was one of the first. And I'm even going to be up in the summer, I think in June, I'm actually going to be on a like live stream panel sort of thing. I don't know the exact details yet, but a bunch of RWBY fangame creators are getting together, and they actually invited me to come and, like, you know, be on a panel, which I'm really excited to do. So I'll let you guys know when that's happening if you have any interest. But, you know, that was my first big project I ever finished, and every single time since then I've tried to finish things. Like I said, I tried to make my own video game a very long time ago. It was called Spellblade, which was kind of like a modern fantasy RPG with, like, you know, fantastical elements and things, and it's kind of like the Tale of the Hero sort of thing, kind of inspired by, you know, The Legend of Zelda and stuff like that, but like, and like Final Fantasy. I tried making that a long time ago, completely overreached what I was able to do, and just completely fell apart. I don't think the old Game Jolt page for it, where I was advertising it, is still up, and the videos I had on its development have been taken off the channel since then. So that was a big blow to my ability to kind of like finish things and like continue long projects. Like I said, I tried writing a book, and when I couldn't make the game, I tried turning the story that I had into a book, and I've scrapped it and rewritten it several times. And I want to get back into it, I really do. But again, the motivation is hard. So when I started this channel, I made that first video, and for the record, the video's done. I will say, this video that we're doing right now, it's done. If you don't want to hear all this, you can click off of it. There's not going to be any last-minute special information. So if you don't want to hear all this, click off now. But when I started this channel, like, I thought, yeah, I'll make a few videos, and then, you know, I'll probably lose motivation and I'll stop again. But I think the difference here is being able to see, like, the responses that I got from people in real time. The support that people were giving me overall, the way people, I guess, spoke to me, and, like, you know, kind of like was, you know, they gave, like, there's always that kind of meme about, like, men and compliments, but there is a bit of truth to it, and I think most dudes out there can agree. And it's just like, you know, when you get that many people saying good things about you, and, like, you know, really, you know, being very, very generous and kind to me. I mean, I had criticism, I did, but it was never anything, like, nasty. It was always like, oh, you know, you could try this or this or this, and this would really help with this. And it was always people, like, either being really kind, giving, like, you know, being really cool to me, and, like, giving me criticism, like, constructive criticism and all that sort of thing. And I think that really just kind of gave me a confidence boost, and it gave me the motivation to keep going. And now, this channel, as a whole, is the biggest project I've ever done. When I made that original fan game, like I said, that was, I think, all in all, I think the original game took 6 months to develop. And then I updated it periodically over the course of about a year. And I still don't think that project was as big as this channel. I don't, because I only worked on it in small bursts periodically over a long period of time, and, well, this channel, I think, has outlasted that for me. And I think, right, like, I know technically I technically spent more time on that. I mean, there was a long time ago, my memory of the whole thing could be a bit fuzzy. But the fact that I've actually been able to stick with something for so long without losing motivation. I mean, obviously, I've been, like I said before, I've been experiencing a little bit of burnout lately. But I think now that, again, we're 6,500 subscribers in, give or take, we're 100 videos later, and the support and, you know, the general community that we've built here has just grown and evolved so much. I feel like I just want to keep going. I never had the intention of being a content creator or a YouTuber, and this will never be my primary job. This will always be something I do for fun. But I think now that, you know, we're so far into this, and we've got a really good thing going here, I think it's just given me the motivation to be better in a lot of things in life. I mean, I've said before that I'm a very socially anxious person normally, or at least I used to be. Well, now that I've got this channel and this community, and we're talking all the time, and I speak to, like, dozens of different people a day, like, from all over the world, and I do the live streams and stuff like that, it's just giving me so much more confidence in myself, and so much more ability to be able to do things, like just being able to finish things, to be able to commit myself to things. I feel like in small little ways in my daily life, I've just been a better person. And I genuinely have all of you to thank for that. 100 videos strong, and hopefully 100 more on the way. I'm obviously going to be shifting into D&D content starting next week. I'm going to be uploading a D&D build, not a deity build, a D&D build on Monday. I'm thinking I will do a live stream, if not this weekend, the next, where we will build, like, the companions, getting, like, say, like, Housen and the like, getting the community involved in that. I want to maybe, since now we finally have a trailer and a release date announcement for Shadow of the Erdtree, the Elden Ring DLC, I might start doing Elden Ring builds again, returning to my Souls roots that I did before I even did, like, D&D stuff, before I even did Baldur's Gate 3 stuff. So that could be fun. I see now that even though I want to vary my content more, I want to slowly start to move out of Baldur's Gate 3 into other things. I don't think Baldur's Gate 3 will ever go away from me. I mean, we're going to be finishing the deity builds, and there's always going to be reasons to return if I wanted to do remastered builds or come up with new concepts, anything like that. I feel like, and again, my D&D builds, at least for the first few, I want to make it so that they can be modded into the game, as I've said before. So, Baldur's Gate 3 is never really going to go away, and it's always going to be where I got my start, but whether this channel continues to grow or not, I think I'm in it now. Unfortunately for you all, you're stuck with me. But I don't think I'd have it any other way now. A sincere thank you once again. The next big milestone is going to be 10k subscribers. If we get there. And if we do, well then I think I'm pretty much locked in. As I said. Yeah, no, this channel's given me a lot to think about. It's given me a lot in general. And I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Thank you all so much for watching back then on September 2nd, to watching now on February 22nd, and to watching in the future. I'll see you all later.